A Star and a Stranger. Part 3, Chapters 8 to 11. Chapter 8, Uncharted Territory. Minji woke up the next morning feeling strangely clear, as if everything in the world had rearranged itself overnight. The same city, the same schedule, the same routine, but nothing felt the same. She had talked to Xavian. Really talked to him. For the first time, it didn't feel like a moment of curiosity that would evaporate as quickly as it had come, but a conversation, a tentative step into something neither of them could yet put into words. But nonetheless, she couldn't shake the feel of the way he'd looked at her, the unspoken comprehension that seemed to traverse the space between them. She wouldn't say that there wasn't a small thrill that ran through her every time she thought of his smile, the way his eyes softened when he saw hers. She didn't yet know what it meant, but it had begun something in her that would not be easily ignored. Xavian couldn't get the conversation out of his head. He remembered the echoes of their words, the space between them, the feeling that all of it was weighed against something greater. He had guarded his feelings for so long that he couldn't risk letting anyone in. But for Minji, it was different. She made him want to make the attempt, to see what this next thing could be, even if it were slow, uncertain work. The problem was, he didn't know what to do with this new territory. He turned to look at her, though he didn't often talk to anyone, let alone someone like her. Someone whose life was already so full of noise, so many people. He had always liked the quiet, the anonymity. But with Minji, there was just no denying the pull. The next time they would meet was a surprise, only a few days after their talk outside the café. Minji had just been running chores, making it through her day off, when she passed the same café again. It was accidental. She was only heading out for a little coffee, pretending not to feel a tightening in her chest whenever she thought of Xavian. But when she walked through the front door, there he was sitting at the window as before. Their eyes locked almost immediately, and the flood of familiar emotions washed over her, all hesitation about whether to speak to him or not. Their most recent conversation felt like the last one where there was still a doorway between them. And now what? What did this mean? Before she had time to think otherwise, Xavian pushed himself up, eyes softening as the chair scraped against the floor. "Hey," he said, his voice as relaxed as it always was, but with a warmth Minji could hear. "Hi," she said breathlessly. She had an odd sense of self-consciousness, like she didn't know what to do around him anymore. "Didn't think you'd be seeing me so soon," he said with a slight, teasing smile. "Care to join me?" He gestured to the empty chair opposite him. Minji gave a nervous smile, but nodded, walking past to sit in front of him. As she sat down, she didn't want to dwell on how her heart skipped when he looked at her. They both danced around words they couldn't say, but no one was ready to shatter the silence that followed. Minji fidgeted in her seat, tapping her fingers anxiously on the rim of her cup. "So," she started, not sure how to follow their last conversation. "How have you been?" Having laughed, Xavian leaned back in his seat. "Been all right. The usual stuff. Work, a few personal projects." He raised an eyebrow and glanced at her. "You? Busy," Minji replied with a quiet laugh. "But that's nothing new." She hesitated and then continued, it's like weird, man. In this world where everything moves so fast. So loud." She stopped herself before she went on. "I don't know why I'm saying that." "I understand," said Xavian, his expression intense but sympathetic. "You're constantly surrounded by people, and yet you can somehow still feel like you're on your own." Minji nodded. His words felt as though they pierced the cacophony of her life. There was something about his voice, something about how he spoke, that made her feel as though she weren't the only one trying to understand it all. "I don't know what this is between us," she confessed in a low voice, her eyes falling to the table. "I don't know if I'm even ready for it." Xavian didn't hesitate. He stretched across the table, putting his hand over hers. "I don't know what it is. But that's not a bad thing. We don't need to know right now." Minji glanced up at him. Surprising relief lit up her face. There was something about his eyes, though, that eased her discomfort, an understanding she couldn't quite name. He wasn't pressuring her for answers. He showed up in that moment without expectations. It was the simplicity of it she needed. "I guess we don't." Her voice was softer now. As the chat went on, Minji found herself sharing more than she thought she would. The vulnerability between them felt unlike anything she had ever felt. When she was with him, even in the chaos that was her life, she could breathe a little easier. For the first time in a long time, she did not feel alone. Not with him there. Chapter 9, Fractured Quite. Minji was sitting on the edge of her bed, scrolling through the messages on her phone. A stream of texts from her fellow group members appeared on the screen. A string of laughing emojis from Hanny after their most recent dance rehearsal. Danielle had texted her to confirm plans for a group dinner the following day. But there was a message from Heron that stood out. "Heron, are you okay? You've seemed off lately." Minji halted, eyes glued to the words. She hadn't wanted to be distant, but she hadn't been able to shed the restlessness in her. Xavian was always on her thoughts, the fleeting sense of calm he provided lingering after they parted ways, never quite leaving her mind. But how to explain that to Heron? To any of them? Her thumb paused over the keyboard as she struggled for an answer. Not even able to type anything, she heard a knock on the door. "Minji," Hanny's voice light and playful. "Dinner's almost ready. Are you coming, or are you just going to text all night?" Minji smiled faintly. "I'll be right there." She typed a quick response to Heron. "I'm fine, just tired. I'll tell you later," and rammed her phone into her purse. The last thing she needed was for her own group to begin questioning her. The girls in new jeans, they were like sisters to her, and she hated hiding things from them. But right now, it was like there was something about the bond she and Xavian shared that was different. She wasn't prepared to share it yet. People were chatting and laughing in the usual manner upstairs. Minji walked into the kitchen with the others, where Hanny was making a salad, and Danielle plated the food. "You're late," Hanny ribbed, her eyes glimmering. "What? Did you get stolen away by Xavian again?" Minji froze mid-step. Her fingers curled slightly into her palm. "How do you know his name?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Danielle glanced up, smiling. "You let it slip once when you were talking about the cat. Remember?" And Hanny added, dragging out the word, "We're not blind, Minji. You've been acting all mysterious lately. Kind of cute, actually." Minji tripped over her words, her cheeks heating slightly. "No, I was just taking my time. Busy day." Hanny arched an eyebrow, clearly not believing her, but didn't push the matter. Yeah, right, she said, smirking. "We all know you are just trying to avoid us to talk to your mysterious stranger." Minji squeezed out a laugh that didn't come as easily as hoped. She took a seat at the table, relieved that the discussion soon turned to other matters. The rest of the group chatted about their upcoming schedules, performances, and the recent success of their new album. But in the midst of the noise, Minji almost felt detached, her thoughts wandering back to Xavian. She realized she was being unfair to her members, to herself, even, for retreating into this tiny bubble of connection with him. They were entitled to her undivided attention. But so was her personal life. It warranted clarity. Later that evening, Minji was sitting alone for a moment on the couch with her tea in the living room. In the kitchen, the sound of giggles escaping from her group mates floated toward her, and for a brief moment, Minji let herself melt into the calm, the warmth of the tea lulling her. Her phone buzzed again. It was Xavian. "Xavian, can I see you tomorrow? You're busy, I know, but I want to talk more. No pressure." Minji smiled at the message, the little thrill she always felt hearing from him returning at full force. Even this simple text sent her heart racing. Her fingers poised over the screen, unsure of how to respond. She wanted to see him, but so many layers to peel. The public eye, her group, her feelings. What would they think of her if she allowed this relationship to take shape? She was pulled from her thoughts when Heron came inside, sitting next to her with a knowing smirk. "You seem deep in thought," she said quietly, looking at Minji's phone. "Is it him?" Minji didn't know why she felt so transparent at that moment. Heron was one of those who knew her best, and if they haven't had this conversation even before, it didn't take much to realize where Minji's head was at. "Yeah," Minji said, her voice low. "I'm just not sure. It feels right, but it's complicated." Heron looked at her with a gentle knowing. "You don't need to rush anything, but there's only so long you can keep it bottled up. You are entitled to your own happiness, Minji." Minji sighed, Heron's words hitting fresh wounds. "I know, but it's hard, Heron. It's just like everything is always so public. Everyone's watching. I don't know what this is going to mean yet, but I don't want to screw it up." Heron touched Minji's hand reassuringly. "You'll figure it out. Just don't shut yourself down entirely. We're all here for you." Minji smiled, glad for the gentle ease injected into her workday by her friend. But even as Heron's words comforted her, there was still part of Minji that remained uneasy. She knew that for someone like her, who was both a woman and an idol, and on top of that, the woman of the hour, there was always the trepidation of someone discovering something unsavory about them. Could she balance the two without losing herself? The studio lights felt warmer than usual, casting a soft glow on Minji's face as she leaned against the dance practice room's mirror. Her legs ached slightly from the hours of rehearsal, but her mind was elsewhere. Despite her best efforts to focus, Xavian's voice, soft, teasing, a little too comforting, echoed faintly in her thoughts. Earth to Minji, Hanny's playful tone broke through the haze. She flopped onto the floor next to her, tossing her phone aside. You've been zoning out all day. Something, or someone on your mind? Minji's heart skipped. Hanny was always quick to pick up on her moods, but the way she said it, with that mischievous lilt in her voice, made Minji's pulse quicken. I'm just tired, Minji deflected, tugging a loose thread on her sweater. It wasn't a total lie. The long practice sessions leading up to their next comeback were draining. But the exhaustion wasn't the only thing tugging at her lately. Across the room, Heron stretched quietly, but her eyes flicked toward Minji every so often. She wasn't as forward as Hanny, but Minji had long known that Heron's silence didn't mean she wasn't observing. She could feel the weight of her curiosity pressing lightly against her. I don't buy it, Hyen's voice chimed in. The youngest member perched on a practice block, legs swinging lazily. You've been weird lately. Like smiling to yourself weird. What's up with that? Minji felt her throat tighten. She hadn't even realized it was that obvious. Am I not allowed to be in a good mood? She shot back lightly, though she kept her tone careful. New, Hyen dragged out the word, her eyes narrowing with exaggerated suspicion. But your good mood is weird. Suspiciously weird. The room filled with the sound of Hanny's laughter. Leave her alone, Hyen. Minji's allowed to have secrets. Then, turning toward Minji with a grin, she added, but you know, if it's a cute secret, we're all ears. Minji rolled her eyes, but warmth curled low in her stomach. How could she explain that the secret wasn't so much about a fleeting crush, but about Xavian, about the late-night walks, the way he seemed to see through the polished idol facade, or how she found herself craving those quiet moments with him? I don't have any secrets, Minji said finally, but her words felt thin even to her own ears. Heron arched an eyebrow but said nothing. Instead, she rose gracefully to her feet, brushing invisible dust from her sweatpants. Whatever it is, you're thinking about it a lot. Just don't let it weigh you down too much. There was a softness in her voice, a layer beneath the words that Minji recognized as concern. For a fleeting moment, Minji wanted to tell them. To share the quiet thrill of meeting someone who didn't see her as Minji of New Jeans, but simply as a girl who liked stray cats and soft conversations. But how could they understand? And worse, what if they worried? What if it put everything they had at risk? Before anyone could press further, their manager's voice rang out from the hallway. 10-minute break's over. Back to it. A collective groan filled the room. Hanny scrambled to her feet, grabbing Hyen's hand and dragging her toward the center of the floor. You're lucky, she said over her shoulder to Minji. But don't think we're done with the questions. Minji let out a soft laugh, shaking her head as she followed them. But even as the music surged through the speakers and their synchronized movements resumed, part of her mind remained elsewhere. On a boy with a silver ring on his finger and a smile that made the world outside their hidden little moments seem far away. Later that night, the city glittered below as Minji leaned against the rooftop railing. After practice, she had told herself to rest, to push aside her thoughts. But her feet had carried her back to the place where it all began. The quiet alley, the stray cat, and eventually him. The wind stirred as the sound of footsteps approached behind her. She didn't flinch. Somehow she knew. You really shouldn't be out here this late. Xavian's voice was low, familiar. There was no judgment in it, just quiet amusement. Minji smiled to herself before turning. You always say that, but you're here too. He stepped into the faint light, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. Yeah, well, maybe I was hoping to see you again. His words were casual, but there was something underneath, a sincerity that made her heart skip. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the city below filling the spaces between them. How was practice? Xavian asked softly. Minji let out a breathy laugh. Long, exhausting. And everyone's too observant for their own good. Ah, he leaned against the railing beside her. They're catching on? A little. She tilted her head, studying his profile. Not that there's anything to catch on to, right? Xavian turned his head toward her, his eyes meeting hers in the dim light. I guess that depends on what you want there to be. The words hung between them, heavy with a meaning neither of them was quite ready to say out loud. For all her carefully crafted image as an idol, this, being seen, being understood, felt messily real. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. And for once, it felt okay not to have all the answers. Chapter 10, Whispers and Questions. Coated in a vague scent of both sweat and vanilla-scented lotion, the members of New Jeans languished across the practice room floor. The speakers hummed low behind them, the final notes of their choreography receding as the group kicked back into a well-deserved break. Minji pulled her knees to her chest, back to the mirror, checking her phone, a habit she couldn't seem to break lately. No messages from him, but she wasn't sure if that made her relieved or disappointed. "You've been looking at your phone a lot recently." Hanny's voice cut through the silence, casual yet probing. She lay on her stomach with her chin propped up on her palms, the entirety of her focus trained on Minji. "What? Did you get stolen away by Xavian again?" For a split second, Minji's fingers froze before her phone disappeared. "I'm checking the time," she said with as much slickness as she could muster. But the heat was rising in her neck. "Oh yeah, since I can easily miss the gigantic wall clock," Hyan quipped, her tone playful but her eyes glimmering with curiosity. From across the room, Heron watched quietly, drinking from her water bottle. She hadn't spoken much, but the weight of her stare told Minji that she was listening closely. More than usual. Minji forced herself to smile, to lean into the playfulness. "You guys are so dramatic. I can't look at my phone without an interrogation?" "It's not an interrogation," Danielle said, her voice warm with laughter. "It's an intervention. You've been acting distracted, Uni. We're just curious." Minji laughed it off, but Hanny wasn't finished. "You know, we don't judge," she said, sliding closer. "I mean, I can't blame you if you were texting someone special. You have been all smiley after practice lately." She raised an eyebrow. "What's the deal?" "I smile all the time," Minji shot back, but the defiant edge in her voice gave her away. "Not like this." Heron finally spoke, her voice steady and unreadable. "This feels different." Minji's heart raced in her chest. Of course, it would be Heron to notice. She always figured out what Minji tried to hide. "Fine," Minji said, making herself sound breezy. "You guys already know about Xavian, don't you?" The room fell into a hush. Even Hyan, who always had a comeback, was mute. Hanny clapped her hands, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Wait, so it is about him? The guy you've been sneaking off to see?" "I knew it." Heron's gaze softened, but her tone remained steady. "We've noticed, Minji. We just didn't want to push you until you were ready to talk." Danielle leaned forward, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "Is it serious? You've seemed different lately. Happier, but also distracted." Minji sighed, her defenses crumbling. "It's complicated. He's not in the industry, and it's nice to have something just for me. But I know it's risky." Hyan tilted her head, her youthful curiosity shining through. "So what's he like? Is he cute? Does he know how lucky he is?" Hanny smirked, her protective side showing. "If he breaks your heart, we're coming for him. Just saying." Heron's voice was gentle but firm. "We're here for you, Minji. But you need to be careful for yourself and for all of us." Minji felt a lump rise in her throat. Their concern was genuine, and it only made her feel more torn. "I know," she said quietly. I don't want to mess this up. But I also don't want to let you guys down." Danielle reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Minji's arm. "You won't let us down. We just want you to be happy. But Heron's right, you have to be careful. The world watches everything you do." Hyan nodded, her usual playfulness replaced by a rare seriousness. "Yeah, Uni. We don't want you to get hurt, or worse, get caught in some scandal." Minji managed a small smile, grateful for their support, but still weighed down by the complexity of it all. "I'll figure it out. I just need some time." Hanny grinned, breaking the tension. "Well, if you need us to scare him off, just say the word. We've got your back." The room filled with laughter, and for a moment, Minji felt the weight lift. But even as the conversation shifted to lighter topics, her thoughts lingered on Xavian and the delicate balance she was trying to maintain. Chapter 11: Stolen Memories. The city's hum faded into a quiet murmur as Minji and Xavian walked side by side, the glow of dim streetlights casting soft shadows across the pavement. Nights like these felt like a stolen secret, something fragile and precious, tucked away from the world that demanded too much from both of them. "You know," Xavian said, his voice low but warm, "I still think Luna brought us together on purpose." Minji laughed softly, tilting her head to look at him. "You're giving your cat too much credit." "Hey, ghosts got instincts," he insisted, his smile teasing but his gaze softer than usual. "She doesn't just let anyone pick her up." "I'm honored," Minji murmured, brushing her hair behind her ear as a breeze swept through the alley. It wasn't just Ghost she thought about these days, it was him. The boy who made her feel like more than just a polished version of herself. They turned a corner, stepping into the quiet sanctuary of a small park tucked away between apartment buildings. The air felt still, as if the world had paused just for them. "Do you?" Xavian hesitated, hands buried in his pockets. "Do you ever get tired of it? All the pressure, the spotlight? Minji's steps slowed, the weight of the question settling over her. Sometimes, she admitted, it's a lot, but I chose this life. And I love it, even when it's hard. Xavian nodded as if he understood more than he let on. Still, it's gotta be exhausting. Always being someone people expect you to be. His words tugged at something inside her, something no one else seemed to notice. It is, she said quietly. But with you, I don't have to be that person all the time. The confession hung between them, heavier than the night air. For a moment, Minji wondered if she had said too much, if she was letting herself get too close. But then Xavian smiled, soft and genuine. Good, he said, shifting closer. Because I like you just as you are. Her heart skipped. It wasn't the scripted affection she was used to hearing from fans. It wasn't praise for her image or her talent. It was just her. I never expected any of this, she admitted, voice softer now. Meeting you. Sneaking around like this. She let out a breathy laugh, shaking her head. It's crazy. Xavian leaned against a low brick wall, watching her with that calm, steady gaze she was beginning to crave. Crazy's not so bad, he said. As long as you don't regret it. I don't, she said without hesitation. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant sound of a car passing by, the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze, it all faded into background noise. Minji felt her pulse quicken as Xavian's hand brushed against hers, tentative but deliberate. You're not scared? He asked quietly. I am, she admitted, intertwining her fingers with his. But being here, with you, it's worth it. The warmth of his hand in hers steadied something inside her. A reminder that, for once, she didn't have to carry everything alone. You know, Xavian said after a pause, a hint of a smile playing at his lips, if you ever want to escape for real, we could always run away and raise ghosts together. Minji laughed, shaking her head. As tempting as that sounds, I think my company would track me down within an hour. Fair point, he chuckled, squeezing her hand. Guess I'll just settle for seeing you like this, when you can. A flicker of guilt curled in her chest. No matter how much she wanted these moments, there was always the reality waiting outside them. But for now, she wasn't ready to let go. You'll still be here, right? She asked, her voice softer than she intended. Xavian didn't hesitate. As long as you want me to be. And in that moment, with the city lights flickering in the distance and his fingers laced with hers, Minji let herself believe it might be enough.